Am I seeing things? Is this real? This doesn't feel real, but I guess it is. First Squad is not the movie I expected from 4C, but is one that happened nonetheless. The premise is straight schlock, with no real ending or concrete origin. The characters almost just thrown in the middle of a story. There's a few flashbacks to try and bring it back to good measure, you know? Though none of that could be a hit against the work, in theory at least, if the core of it was fun and engaging, but for me, I can't say that.
Both sides share the same goal. Victory at any cost.
The biggest flaw I see is just how dull it all is. We're talking about Nazis, a cult, and samurai psychic girls, and I'm not interested at all. Certainly, there's a couple moments of flair. The title credits plays off the Soviet iconography in quite a well way. The composer DJ Crush does a pretty good job, all things considered, with the orchestration. But it's like overall, I think it's kind of limited by like the structure of the thing, that he doesn't really get to break out and do his unique stylings too much. Because overall, the characterization is quite flat. Everyone has a sort of stock outline, simply there to save the world and nothing else. On the technical side, while it is still 4C, the production components are like well presented, like the machinery, the CGI. They're doing their business, and like some of the fight scenes are fine, and there's definitely some highlights at the end. It's all kind of rotary, though. I actually believe the best shot that we see in the whole thing is the last one. It's unfortunate to say that, like, I feel like the origins for this whole movie is more interesting than the actual story.
We're not entirely a Russian company per se. In fact, the company that owns the property is based out of Toronto, Canada. But it's true that most of us who took part in the creation of First Squad on this end, not on the Japanese end, are origins of Russia.
First Squad was written by Russians who grew up during the Soviet era, and the author themselves have said they were inspired from a series of like illustrated books called The Pioneer Heroes, which were quite popular in the USSR. They were published during the 80s, came on like paperbacks and cassettes, like they sold millions of copies. They're kind of like the equivalent of superheroes over there. And the reason they wanted to make it an anime actually came from how a lot of these new mangas they were seeing at the time that were coming out in the 2000s reminded them a lot of the old pulp stories that they grew up with. So it's sort of like a merging between these two worlds. They said they came at novices. It's not something they usually do. And because of that, they sort of didn't know the taboos. Like one of the people behind it said that they weren't familiar with like the World War II taboo, saying that like, they were told that it was commercially not promising to do those sorts of stories. Considering like Japan was not their target market, that it didn't really make a difference to them, since they were going for Russia. So considering that they're Russians, it's interesting they got 4C on board, but they've always been quite open to these sort of relationships. 4C and Muller Entertainment started their relationship more as a friendship, and it went into business. And 4C at this point had already done international work. They became more comfortable about partnering with foreigners. Ultimately, it seems like the full production went about 5 years. Although there was a Russian script, they had to rely on the translator's abilities to then bring that back into Japanese so they could understand if the project was something that they wanted to do. And you can certainly see like the origins come first in a music video by 4C. For a Russian rap song of all things. And I think it actually has a stronger vision, like they present with more colourful flair than the movie, but of course, when you have 3 minutes, that's different than having 70 minutes. Yeah, I just like the direction more. The Japanese director here, Ashino, had worked a lot with the Japanese department of Disney, so they were quite well versed on how to work for like a more international side of animation. Maybe that's why the style here is a bit more uniformed. They went for a more traditional outlook, and I do wonder if that was more to appeal to the Russian demographic, since Russia is not really a place where animation has been like pushed towards them, especially towards an older audience in this way before. So I feel like they might have not been trying to push it too far in the same way as the music video could also be like just a situation with the production itself. And the producer had said that First Squad seemed to be the first Russian animation aimed at adults, based on the history of its own home country. So that was quite a rarity for them to produce. And apparently it did really well in Russia, better than anything outside of like Ghibli at the time, and received a couple of awards in Moscow's International Film Festival. Soviets fighting Nazis returns to the sort of victorious setting for like that Soviet era, because this is coming out way past the point of like the Soviets' fall. And it's a story that kind of flourishes in one of Russia's sort of like victory moments, a very nationalistic piece, you could say. And it brings back to the glory days mentality. And there's enough differentiation here that it's not exactly 100% like revival propaganda or anything. Ultimately, you can kind of see this was supposed to be the first of a more larger multimedia project. They made a manga alongside it, but there's never been like an animation follow-up, even with the success. Maybe it just wasn't in the cards. So even if we've seen a first squad, we'll never see a second one. Considering the landscape of the time with transnational projects, I can see why 4C wanted to try this out, and they've already gotten their bite on this in other prior ones. And of course, 4C didn't really give up the Western productions, as we'll see from the next production. And I will say, with a track record as strong as 4C's, it's easy to give them like a pass here. And it obviously found its audience during the time, so it's not like it was a wasted endeavor for anyone involved. And they're going to bring forward a lot of these ideas in the next Western productions, for better or for worse. Hello there, we have a cat over here, and you have just watched a 4Sember or a 4C month video. Now there's supposed to be a bunch of them, we're supposed to be releasing them every day after all, and at the end of the month we should have a full, expanded, revised version for everyone to see. If you want to keep checking them out, there should be a playlist probably on the screen, I'm guessing. And to thank everyone who has helped support me during this period of time, it's been a little bit hectic to try and get these videos out. I need to thank all my patrons who get exclusive content. I got a lot of stuff earlier, etc., etc. Jay, Steven's mum, Takayuki Suzuki, Alex Moriarty, Paul, Subsofa, I hope I'm saying that right, and Chunks. Among all these other people, I've had to expand. We're in the editing dock right now, but I've had to expand the screen because I knew there was more space I needed to get all the names on there, so I've changed the angle slightly. Yeah, thanks everyone for their support. Check out tomorrow for the next video. I'll catch you.